Yeah. you want to cut it short, we can do that. We're highly flexible.
Might have to take a break, might have to grab a power cord, but one way or the other, we'll see how it goes.
All right.
I'm good. How are you, sir?
Whoa.
And before we get those juices spilt on the counter, head on over to bumbleking.com and go over to the FAQ section. I have a big Sonic FAQ for the stuff that I've been hit with the most recently. So save yourself some hassle, save yourself some time, save yourself some frustration, and look what I got up there. The transition to IDW has been fine and dandy. I'm freelance, so I can work for anyone at any given time. So even when I was doing the old run of the book, I was doing stuff for other publishers here and there. So that much wasn't really that different. It was just, who's my main contact, what's the time zone, so I know when to be calling and what to specify, so that it's not, we'll have a meeting at 2. Right. Oh, 2 your time. But the folks at IDW have been grand. We've really had a lot of fun getting the new book up and running. It's been fun for me because they thought they knew what Sonic was about. They did not realize what the fandom was. They did not truly understand what Sonic on the internet is. And they learned real fast. So,
yeah,
it's really charming, especially to see the outpouring of love and excitement that the fandom has. I think that's what took the editors by surprise. Even when I was just how passionate and driven the fandom can be, and they are really overwhelmed and touched and happy by it.
Right on. Apparently, it wouldn't be a Sage stream if there weren't technical issues, so I guess I can do this again real quick. We just asked Ian how the transition to IDW was. Apparently my opening monologue was completely missed, so that's always good. So real quick rundown. I'm Carson, also known as Neo Hazard, your host of Sage this year. Alongside me is Perfect Chaos Zero and Instant Sonic, and you just heard Ian Flynn talk about the transition to IDW. That was the question. Sorry about that. Ian should have gone through, though, so that should be good. I apologize for that, though, folks, and I apologize to you, too, as well, Ian. Like I said, wouldn't be a Sage stream without technical issues.
I run my own podcast. I know that there are gremlins in the electronics. That's just how it goes.
Oh, yeah.
You put the age in Sage, Neo.
Yep, I sure do. 26 going on 58. How do computers work? Well, so then my next question would be, because... So... It's great to hear that the transition to IDW was really smooth, but as far as sort of being a reboot of sorts of the comics, was it very difficult to kind of start from the ground up, or did you have a pretty good launching point, or how difficult was it starting with IDW as far as the writing process and where to go with the series?
That was the easiest part. The timing was excellent because Sonic Forces was, right there, and it's such fertile ground for story material that it was very easy to say, okay, the game is done. It ends with this nice big open set piece, the world recovering from the war, Eggman is missing. That's such a great jumping off point. That wrote itself. That was no problem. There were a number of ideas that I pitched out there on how we were going to move forward. IDW liked the one that we've got running right now. We ran that by Sega. They loved it. I actually pitched it to Sonic Team in their headquarters. I was sitting across from Izuka-san, telling him what I want to do with the comic, and no, that wasn't butterflies in my stomach. No, not at all. And that all went very well, and we just kind of rolled from there. So, truth be told, it was one of the nicest experiences I've had in getting a storyline up and running. It was rather easy overall.
Well, awesome.
Super cool.
So I guess the last question that I have for you here before we start throwing it over to our audience over in the Sonic Fan Games Discord, and by the way, in case you didn't hear me, because it's very likely that you didn't, we're going to be taking questions from you guys, the audience, throughout this interview. So if you want to ask Ian any questions, make sure to go to the Sonic Fan Games HQ Discord, where we have a special channel opened up where you can ask Ian your questions, and we will ask him on the air. But in any case, the last question that I got for you, Ian, getting away from the IDW stuff and just kind of asking from you personally, if you could write for a completely different franchise, not Sonic at all, it doesn't even have to be Sega, literally anything at all, what franchise would it be and why?
All of them, because I want them. Now, I get this question a lot, and it's so broad. It's like, do you mean like any game franchise, any cartoon franchise, any
let's
movie
narrow
franchise,
it down,
any franchise under the sun? It's
yeah. Well, let's go ahead and narrow it down. Since we're Sonic and we're video games, let's narrow it down to another video game franchise that you would like to write for.
Battletoads.
Honestly, that would be kind of awesome. A Battletoads comic.
I mean, if it has a plot line, I would love to find a way to adapt it to comics. But the one that is on the top of my list is I want to do a Star Fox book.
Oh,
yes, that'd be pretty sweet.
Doing the story from 64 to Dinosaur Planet to Assault to Command. I know what I want to do. I know how I would approach it. It's all there. It's just Nintendo, give it to me.
Oh my God. Yeah, I know that, like, gosh, early 90s, Nintendo did that kind of pseudo-realistic Star Fox comic, but yeah, I don't think there's been anything since, so that would be amazing.
There was that one manga that was kind of canon in bridging 64 to Dinosaur Planet, which is really good, but other than that, I don't think there has been any Star Fox comic material.
I'm gonna have to look that up. I didn't know that was a thing.
It's been, I don't know if it's had an official translation, but I know there's a fan translation out there. It's called something like Farewell, Beloved Falco.
Oh, that makes sense. So it's about what happened to
Star
Falco
Fox
between...
manga, you'll find it. Oh, it's absolutely gorgeous.
Awesome.
Fantastic read.
Yeah, I'll definitely have to check that out then.
I am writing a graphic novel series for Dark Horse on the ARMS series.
Really?
So, yes.
Interesting.
It doesn't have a firm public release date, but it'll be out sometime next year.
Awesome.
And that was a blast, and I can officially say I have worked on a Nintendo property now, so everybody go buy ARMS so that Nintendo says, hey, we like this guy writing comics so I can do Star Fox. You are all instrumental to my plan to take over the world.
There you go. Perfect.
And we're still waiting on a few questions, so I actually got one. When you actually moved over to IDW and remade the comic book universe, you definitely left a lot of characters behind that we all know you had a great deal of passion and love for. How did you feel about leaving Bunny and Sally and the gang behind when you moved on to
Specifically
the IDW scene? All of them. Those are probably the two most popular, though.
Well, first off, let's be clear here. It's not like I packed up my office and moved on to a different building.
Right.
Archie Comics offices are in New York. IDWs are in California. I'm in Toronto, so I haven't moved off my couch for days. Send help. And I still do work for Archie and along with IDW and other publishers. So, it's not like I have moved on. It's not like I have chosen a side. I am now flying the IDW banner. But, that's where the work is, and I was lucky enough to be picked up by it. And that is in large part thanks to the fandom. Like, when IDW reached out to me and said, would you be interested in continuing to work on Sonic books? And I said, yes. One of the key reasons they reached out to me was because there was an outpouring of fans saying, if you're doing a Sonic book, grab Flynn. And
Well, yeah.
Oh, wow. So, you like me. You really like me.
I mean, I can't really think of anyone else out there to be even remotely similarly suited to that particular role. You're the guy for that.
Pish posh. I mean, there were other writers during my tenure: Leah Baker, Tracy Yardley, Evan Stanley. They all did excellent work.
Yeah.
I know I'm forgetting other people, and that's not a slight. I'm just dumb.
Hey, nothing wrong with that, though, right?
Being dumb? No, not at all. Anyway, back to your question. It was heartbreaking, but at this point, my heart had kind of scabbed over because this was the second time I had to drop everything and start over. So it's like, been there, done let's try it again. It was a new deal with a new publisher and a new approach. How do I look at it personally and get excited about it? What do I do to make this a, Sonic book that would appeal to me as a third-time comic fan? And how is it going to appeal to everybody else? And that everybody else is a really, really big audience because about twice as many people are reading the IDW Sonic as they were reading the old run. So it's something I had to keep in mind, is not just my own experiences with the franchise for being with it for so long, but how do I make it fresh and exciting and engaging to all these new people and get them just as hooked on Sonics as I've been for so long.
Yeah.
I like it. Very
I got a question for you. What crossovers are you looking forward to?
Caveat, this is not confirming anything. Do not do this.
There you go.
But IDW is known for their crossovers, so I would think it's a foregone conclusion at some point.
Mm-hmm.
I would think Ninja Turtles would make the most sense.
Oh, man.
I mean, I've worked on Ninja Turtles. I've worked on Sonic. They've got the package deal. Come on! But I know that as soon as it was announced IDW had Sonic, everyone, well, not everyone, but a large portion of people were going, when's the My Little Pony crossover? When's the My Little Pony crossover? And that would work too. It would work very, very easily. Not that I'm really deep into the pony lore, but I've dabbled enough to go, yeah, this would be an easy crossover. And anything else that I haven't thought of, any kind of oddball ones, like, I don't know, Mask, Transformers, anything from the Hasbro line, part of the fun is figuring out, how do you make this work? How do you make the puzzle pieces fit? And if they don't, how do you have fun with that?
For sure. A little bit of that imagination sauce.
Man, I'm just thinking, like, Because there's a new TMNT cartoon coming out, isn't there? Or did it just come out or something?
Yep, Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles on Nickelodeon. It's 5 episodes in.
Yeah,
6?
yeah. So that's perfect. You got the new cartoon starting out, and you got the new Sonic comic starting out. Yeah, there you go.
Sure, that or mainline, either or.
Yeah, exactly. Man, that would be awesome. So looking through some of the questions that we have here, just gonna see what we have. I think this is a pretty, well, easy and not easy question. Jojo asks, what's your favorite Sonic game?
That is actually covered on the FAQ.
Is it really?
Bumblecast.com. News and information. But since we're here, if you're talking classic, it's got to be Sonic Mania Plus. It was neck and neck with Sonic 3 and Knuckles for the longest time, but then Plus came out, and it's like, you won. Just straight up. You have vanquished my favorite game at long last. For modern Sonic, it's a toss-up between Colors and Generations.
I would agree with that,
choice.
yeah.
I like Colors, definitely.
I mean, Generations is a wonderful love letter to the franchise, but Colors to me is the game that got it right. That is 3D Sonic to me.
What about Unleashed itself, though? What do you think of that?
Unleashed is gorgeous.
Mm-hmm.
It definitely has that fun, big scope, kind of Sonic Adventure style. And it set the bar that Colors reached. But I feel like the Werehog stuff kind of drags it down. And more so the Medallion Gathering bogs it down. There's a whole lot of slog to get to the actual gameplay. So that's what I hold against it. I mean, I enjoyed the Werehog a whole lot more than I thought I would. And I think it's a neat mechanic that would have been better suited for Knuckles, but what do I know? But if its stages were like shorter, if you got to enjoy the music instead of the brass band every single time an encounter started.
Yeah. It's a shame.
I would love for them to take that formula, the beat 'em up and the speed stages, and try it again with a little more focus. I understand why they did the Werehog stages so large to increase the length of the game, get your money's worth. I don't fault them for that, especially since the Sonic stages were just huge and glorious and fun, and holy crap did they get hard at the end.
For sure.
I just wish they had dialed back Werehog a bit, and would have preferred Knuckles, because Knuckles is my boy. But, or shoot, I mean, you got Shadow beating up stuff in Sonic 06. If you really have to have a brawler hedgehog, let it be Shadow.
Yeah.
Not really.
I mean, Unleashed is not a bad game. It definitely was a huge step in the right direction. I love Colors so much.
A quick step in the right direction.
Hey.
Haha.
Well, I've got another question for you. Hopefully this one's not on the site. This is from RSM. He asks, which character or characters did you find the most fun to develop or write for, and why? And he says it doesn't have to be Sonic. It could be any comic or franchise, anything you've ever wrote for.
See, you were almost going to the FAQ again, but you went outside of Sonic. Haha, tricky. Wow. That's a broad one. That's going to be hard to narrow down. Well, since we kind of talked about Ninja Turtles a little bit already, Michelangelo has always been my favorite turtle. And I got to write a 40-page special that'll be out some point in the near future. But, getting to write a special that focused on Mikey and putting him in a situation that really tests who he is was not just a treat, but it was, I don't know, it's one of those badges of honor. He's one of my favorite characters. I got to put him in a scenario that wasn't just your standard, here's a Michelangelo story. It really kind of pushed his personal narrative forward. And that was, I feel a little privileged to have been part of that. I had a lot of fun putting together Cosmo, which we did with Archie Comics, that ran 5 issues and wrapped up a couple months ago. That was an old property of theirs, focusing on a bunch of adventuring Martians. And just about everyone in that cast had something fun and quirky to go on with them. And playing them against each other was a lot of fun. I also miss Young Salem, which was another Archie book we did where... Are you guys familiar at all with Sabrina the Teenage Witch?
Just
little
the
bit.
TV show.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's a TV show.
Well, you remember her sassy black cat, Salem?
Yeah.
Yes. Of course.
It's taken different iterations over different media, but basically he was a wizard at one point and cursed to be a cat.
Huh.
So in the manga version of Sabrina, we had this really cool 2-part story by Tanya Del Rio, who actually did a little bit of Sonic work, that looked at Salem as a man and how he was planning to conquer the magic realm and become this all-powerful Dark Lord, and then he got punked and turned into a cat. So I loved that story especially. I like that run overall, but that story in particular grabbed me, so I pitched the idea, well, who was Salem before he got to that point? It's like, what if you were telling a story where Malfoy was the main character? Not necessarily the hero, but the main character. So we did a little 4-issue miniseries with art by Chad Thomas, and it was looking at Salem when he was a young boy growing up in the magic realm, kind of walking that fine line of being a menace, but maybe he has a heart of gold. And I really wanted us to continue that and explore, where did he go wrong? Where did he fall off and become a bad guy and then become a cat? It's just, we had a lot of fun with it, and being the magic realm, it was full of all sorts of nonsensical, crazy, zany critters and monsters and lizard men, and I had a lot of fun with that series.
Well, if you guys want to please Ian, go ahead and start making your Sabrina the Teenage Witch fan games right now at Sabrina the Teenage Witch Fan Games HQ. But no, that is really cool to hear. I really love hearing when someone has a lot of fun with a story and characters that they haven't quite actually touched on before, and they had to do a lot of their research in order to understand those characters and to write them out well.
I tell you, the most intimidating one I did was Superman.
Oh man. Yeah,
and it was only a little 8-page
crazy.
fluff story, and it mostly focused on Atomic Skull, but still, Superman is such a huge character. It's like, okay, everyone's going to have a very strong opinion on this if I do it wrong, or even if I do it right. Don't screw this up. Don't screw this up. Don't screw this up. It's freaking Superman.
That's a big character to be trying to write for.
And he's
Holy
really hard to approach because there's very different interpretations of how to write him. And when you only have 8 pages and he's more of kind of the moral foil to somebody else, I don't know. Those 8 pages were some of the trickiest writing I've had.
That actually, that might answer the next question I was going to ask here from one of our folks, which was from Nax, and that would be was there ever a writing setup that really tested your creativity to the limit, like the sort of setup that pushed your writing skills to the limit? And it sounds like that Superman one actually might be the answer to that question.
It was a tricky one. Another one up there was a original series that was, I believe, put together by Space Goat Publishing and is now done by... Oh, shoot. Let me look this up. Give me just a second. The real reason I have this website is so I can go back and reference this stuff, because I don't remember what in the world I did half the time. Come on. Anyway, it was an original series called Uncanny Valley High, where the premise was... Sparkler Monthly. There we go. It was like Dazzler? Tweakly? No, Sparkler Monthly. Which is still publishing it as far as I know. But the premise is that it's a kind of life sim high school game, but the NPCs don't know that. They're just walking around, living their digital lives thinking they're real, except the game is still in beta, so all sorts of stuff goes wrong. And I was given the premise and told go. And it's like, okay, let's just invent everything from the ground up. Sure, why not? How hard can that be? And that was challenging because you don't, with a franchise book like Sonic or Ninja Turtles or even Superman, you have set parameters, you know. You have an idea of where your boundaries are and what folks are typically looking for in that kind of story and with certain characters. Creating something entirely from scratch for somebody else is an entirely different kettle of fish because you don't know what is going to please people, you know? With my own original stuff that I'm working on, that's a labor of love. I'm going to put it out there. If people like it, great. If they don't, oh well. But that's just me. Doing something brand new for somebody else is far more challenging because you have to do something that's successful for them, but you have no real guidelines aside from what you think works well.
Right.
Should I just grab a question to you, or do you want to ask another one?
No. I was actually just taking that. I personally was taking that in because I just never thought of it that way. No, that's a very good way to put it. I do have one quick question, and then instant PCO. If you guys want to also look through here at some of the questions that we have in Sage Stream to pluck them out. I do have another one here though from Sun Kalen, and they ask, do you have any advice to any upcoming comic writers or storytellers, Ian?
Yeah. And it's very vague and zen-like, so if I sound like a flake, I'm sorry. But the biggest thing is to practice and to persevere. And by practice, I mean write as much as possible, as frequently as possible. I don't mean you have to write 60 pages every day. I just mean keep your mind limber. And it doesn't have to be a finished piece. It doesn't have to be well thought out. It can be a very bad poem. It could be a limerick. It could be a scene between two characters that you have no idea who they are and it doesn't go anywhere and it gets deleted off your hard drive in a couple years. It doesn't matter. It's you keep at it and you improve just by doing. And when I say persevere, it's that, especially breaking into comics, it is such a small market that you are going to be fighting an uphill battle always. I mean, I've been in the industry for something like 12 years now, and it can be tricky finding work, even though I know multiple editors across multiple publishers, because there's only so much to go around. So anyone breaking in is already, fighting tooth and nail with the veterans, with hacks like me. You really are. All you need is your one big break, get your foot in the door, and then don't screw it up. And getting that one big break can be really challenging. The story I told over and over again is that getting on Sonic, which was my first gig, was really pretty much just one big lucky break that took 4 years to get any kind of response. So if you really want it, keep going for it, because if you don't try, you never will. If you do try, there's always that chance of success.
Persistence is the key.
Great way to look at it, man.
I like that. I like that a lot.
I guess I'll go ahead and grab one out of the chat here. So Bleololololol wanted to ask, if you chose the premise of a story for a Sonic game or any game in general, what would it be?
Sorry, run that by me again?
If you chose the premise of a story for a Sonic game or any game in general, what would it be?
Like, if I were to write the story for a game?
Write a game.
Yeah, let's just say it's like a fan game. Yeah, what would your premise for this fan game be?
See, my philosophy when it comes to writing for games is, how does the story serve the game? Unless you're writing something that is specifically narrative-driven, like a visual novel type of thing, or a story-heavy RPG, I think the gameplay should come first, and that should influence what comes from there.
It's actually very accurate.
There's a video game that I did work on, but I can't talk about just yet, where that was exactly it. They had laid out the overall lore, they had established what regions there were in, and the scenes that I wrote played out of what region they were in and what part of the story the main character was at. So there you have the gameplay influencing the story. So if I were to write the premise of a game, it depends on what type of game it is. What is that game trying to do? What is the tone of the game? You don't want to write a goofy scene when it's some grim, dark, first-person murder simulator, you know? Not shooter, murder simulator. Let's be clear about that one. So, if you were to say how would you write a Star Fox game, or how would you write a first-person shooter, it's a very broad question, and I have 1,000,001 answers because there's 1,000,001 options out there. Like if you were to say, how would you write a Halo game, I would say a time bomb goes off and undoes everything from 2 onwards, and we just start fresh.
There you go.
Murasaki has a question. Where do you go to find inspiration when writing for Sonic? Do you play certain games? Is there certain older Sonic media you revisit, or certain music? Anything like that? Like, where do you get your inspiration from?
With Sonic in particular, it comes primarily from the games and asking the question, what next? Like with Sonic Forces, you know, they saved the day, the world's been liberated, Eggman's gone. What happens next? And that became our plans for year 1. It's like, great, all right, now that we know where that's going, what happens next? And I keep asking myself that question over and over again, and I end up having like 8 years worth of story pitches, so I'm good for now. And when the next mainline game comes out and they trot out its story, it's going to throw off all of that. I'm going to go, oh, that was really cool. What happens next? Or what happened in between these moments? What stories can we spin out of it? And on and on and on. The editors get tired of me because I could write like 3 Sonic books at once because I am a giant turbo nerd.
Nothing wrong with efficiency, though, right?
That's a good way to go about it.
Well, all right here. Let's see. So, looking through some of the questions that we have here. So, not sure if you can answer this one, but I guess I'm kind of curious about it too. So, Professor Bad Vibes asks, what was something that you were surprised that you were able to get away with when you first started working, or when you were working on a franchise book, Sonic or no?
Oh, boy. There's a gag in ARMS Volume 1 that I put in there thinking, this is a Nintendo book, it's going to get flagged, there's no way they're going to let me do this, but I'm going to put it in there anyway just to see. And by God, it went through. I'm so happy that joke made it in. So I'm really excited to see that in print.
So that makes that's a double header right there, because not only is it a solid reason for people to get the ARMS book, that answers the question, so there you go.
I'm sure there was something in Sonic somewhere along the line that I'm like, there's no way that they're for this, either on editorial or Sega's end, and it went through, and I'm like, huh, okay. But I can't think of it now, because it's been a while. It has been, I guess it would be, one thing that immediately pops to mind is the death of Tommy Turtle. That was really, really freaking violent, and I kind of wish we hadn't gone that far in retrospect, but hey, it went through.
Yeah.
It worked. People enjoyed it because they're sick, but whatever.
Well, all right.
Savage.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry if we sound like after you answer these questions, because it's like we're also trying to follow up with other other questions from folks, because we're getting flooded in, and these are these are really good. It's just a matter of there's a couple in there that it's like, there's no way because those are spoilers. You can't really answer those, guys.
What happens in Sonic number? No.
Yeah.
Are we ever going to see? Maybe.
This is an interesting one. So Nax asks, was there ever a specific moment in a Sonic game before you started writing that made you realize that you wanted to write stories in that universe? Or what was it that drew you to Sonic?
What drew me to Sonic is that the first real console we had in our home, and I'm not counting the Atari, was Dad came home one day with a Sega Genesis that had Sonic 2 with it. And my brother and I dove into that and spent countless hours. I was Sonic, he was Tails. We took it very, very seriously. You know, he was my wingman. Oh no, I've been caught by the badnik. Quick, get me out. Okay, you go in first, you take the hit, then I'll follow up. real Counter-Strike stuff here. And I was hooked from there. And, you know, you had the cartoon series and the comic series coming out all around the same time, so I was hooked by all that glorious media very quickly. What pushed me towards writing for the series was I started pursuing my English degree and realized in this moment of harrowing epiphany that once I graduated, I needed to find work. I needed to do something with this degree. What do you do with an English degree except teach English? Oh, God. And so I'd been following the book all this time, and I said, well, I like to write. I'm learning how to write better. Shoot, let me see if I can write for the book. How hard can it be to get your foot in the door? And again, it took me 4 years of applying myself, but eventually I got my lucky break as things happened to align, and I worked my ass off from there, and here we are.
Well, awesome. I know that for a lot of us old bees like myself and PCO, that it was the Genesis games like yourself and all the old comics and cartoons that really got us into where we are now, running an entire online convention for fans that that love the Blue Hedgehog so much, you know.
And let me just say that I haven't ever had a computer that was good enough to run most of the stuff, but from what I have seen, the creations of Sage over the years have been absolutely staggering. I mean, what you guys can do in your free time is humbling. You guys are amazing. This is a fantastic show. Thank you guys for putting it together for so long. Thank you for the creators for just showing how creative and your work ethic. It's just, man, it's so freaking cool to see all these fan games.
Nice, dude. Thanks a lot. It's definitely encouraging to hear stuff like that from, especially someone who's like kind of into the stuff, kind of like you, because it everyone needs that little bit of encouragement every now and then, you know. Oh,
absolutely. Yeah, we greatly appreciate it, and we also appreciate you being here as well. It's a lot, especially this year. This is easily the biggest Sage that we've ever had, and it's funny because about a month and a half ago we were going, man, did people forget that Sage was happening? And then it was almost overnight. We just got flooded with submissions and people wanting to stream and everything. So it's always nice to know that the community is still super into this. Especially this year marks 20 years since the very first Sage, which is insane. And it's even more insane to think about that.
There's 20 years since SFGHQ started. It's been 18 since Sage started.
Oh, you're right. Well then, even still, it's like we've got a bunch of talented folks that have submitted games this year that are younger than the website that they are submitting to. It's
it's kind of weird, to be honest, because like there's no real other Sonic site out there for the most part that's as old as we are and that's still doing like funky stuff like we are.
Yeah. But enough about that. We're here for Ian, not about the SFGHQ. Nax actually has another question. He's kind of knocking it out of the park, or at least every time I see a question my eyes just seem to go to, and it seems to be him. But he says, gameplay aside, which Sonic game has your favorite story? Hopefully that's not another one that's on the FAQ.
It's specific enough. It would be Sonic and the Black Knight.
Really?
Really?
Yes. Absolutely no.
Please elaborate.
Yeah.
Because the game itself is... It was better than Secret Rings, but that's not really a high bar to crest.
Oof.
But the story is one of the best. I mean, right out of the gate, once Sonic is picked up by Merlina and she says, we need you to stop King Arthur, but if you do this, you will be the most shameful of knights, a kingslayer, one who's broken his oath. And Sonic goes, can't be the hero every time. And it's like, yeah, all right, that's that free spirit taken in a really interesting different direction. And then after the fake ending, which everybody fell for, when Merlina is revealed to be the big bad and her motivation is to stop the inevitable collapse of Camelot by freezing all of time, and Sonic says, no, you can't do that. That's not life. That's not freedom. Everything has to come to an end, even if it's a bad end. It's like, whoa! When did we get the big boy pants on with the narrative here? I mean, that's an
interesting point. That is an interesting point.
And then you've got the final boss track for that, which I'm sorry is perhaps the greatest musical piece ever composed by man. And I don't know, just it really was one of the best Sonic stories, bar none.
So, to go off a question someone asked earlier, where they said there was a Sonic game you would like to adapt to the comics. Is that a particular Sonic title you would want to do the adaptation for? And if so, or if not, why and what kind of changes would you consider making?
Oh, man. I mean, what I would love to do, IDW, if you're listening, is just a whole spin-off series that is a comic adaptation of the Sonic storyline from Adventure onward. Just make that one big narrative, pave over some of the more questionable plot points, pick certain directions when you have divergent storylines.
So kind of like fix the timeline and just kind of like make a complete
do our own
history
take on
for the game. Yeah,
but,
I like it.
Sonic and the Black Knight, I think, would work pretty well. The biggest question when it comes to adapting a game straight is how do you handle the gameplay sections, and how faithful are you to the cutscenes, because some of them run a little long for what would be narrative, or are a little redundant because you have to remind the player, okay, this is the main plot point, you were busy having fun, here's the story again. So that would have to be trimmed out. But I think Black Knight would work fairly-ish well. We'd have to take some liberties with it, sure, but wouldn't be too hard.
Nice. So on that note, because this is a very relevant and semi-similar question, JoJo was asking, so what do you think of the writing Sonic Adventure 1 and 2? And would you change anything about those two games?
I don't know what the situation with SA1 was. From what I heard with SA2, it was written by the English team, translated to Japanese, and then from the Japanese, the official English translation was made, which would explain some of the funkiness in the way the lines are delivered and some of the gaps in the narrative. The stories are certainly serviceable enough. I like the interconnectivity of SA1. I am always cracking up that the whole reason why Sonic's stage and Skydeck is getting all funky and flipping around is because Knuckles is flipping that switch back and forth and looking for the Master Emerald. No regard for our little blue hedgehog. With SA2, I would like it if we could take a second pass at it and just spruce it up a little. But I think the most interesting thing about approaching SA2 again would be looking how much Shadow has changed since his introduction to where he is now. I mean, if you go back and watch his scenes in SA2, he smirks. He snarks. He's kind of uppity here and there. And after that, it's just been very kind of single note. I am dry and grim. Aside from his anger over that fourth Chaos Emerald.
Where is it? Let's see. What else is a good question we got here from the chat? Or should I just ask one of my own? So, let's see. In the meantime, Midderp has a very simple one, because we are going to be having Mike Pollock attend us here at the Sage event. What's your favorite Eggman quote?
Oh dear.
As someone who's written a lot of those quotes themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking game, but if you open it up to everything that I've written too.
No, the whole thing. The whole enchilada.
Oh dear.
Do we want to do two? Do we want to do one that you've wrote and then just another that you didn't write? Or would that make it too hard?
Oh my god. Not that I can remember exactly word for... Okay. In terms of what I wrote, I guess the first couple things that pop to mind, we'll do a toss-up here. One would be issue 175, his victorious monologue after he's beaten the ever-loving crap out of Sonic. And just reads him his rights and then dumps him in the sand. That was incredibly satisfying to write. But I think what, for me, encapsulates Eggman overall, who is this really twisted individual, but he's so jovial and fun at the same time, is this little backup story we did pre-reboot where he is operating on one of his minions and implanting a bomb into their cybernetics while they're awake, and explaining that if they go against him, they will blow up. And it's just this one panel drawn by Jamal Peppers. It was fantastic, where he looks over and it's all first person, and with this big sunny smile he says, you'll explode all over the place. Very colorful, very festive. It's like
savage.
It's like, how did I get away with that? But that's Eggman to me, and that was a lot of fun.
You know what's weird? Imagine that in Mike Pollock's Eggman voice.
Oh, that's what I do. That I write these for Mike, who, if you haven't had the chance to meet him in person, he is a wonderful fellow.
We've had him on Sage quite a few times.
All right.
So on that note, then, to go with that question I just asked, is there any quotes or lines, perhaps the one you just mentioned, that we should try and get Mike to say on air when we do his interview later today?
No, don't do that, because I don't think he's allowed to.
Yeah, he's not. Yeah, he's not allowed to just say the quotes off the cuff, unfortunately.
That's right.
But, yeah.
I mean, I would love to hear him do everything I've written as Eggman, but that's not going to happen. So don't put him on the spot on Mike. It's in terms of stuff he's done. Just, I don't know. Everything he does with Eggman is gold. Because he does that. He walks that perfect line. He can be really sinister, and he can be hilarious on the drop of a dime. It's just, I mean, there's that bit out of Lost World where he's in a very rare moment where Eggman has not only been defeated, but one-upped, as Zavok is mocking him on that weird ice TV, however that worked. And Eggman beats it to pieces with his own hands. And he goes, my hands are fine as long as I can wrap them around the throat of a Zeddy. And you're like, dude, he's going to murder them with his bare hands. And then a couple scenes later, Sonic's going, 1 minute you're talking about saving lives, the next you're planning genocide. What is your deal? And he goes, I'm a complicated fellow. It's like, with absolute sincerity, it's just, it's great.
Good deal. Let's see if we can find. New. Do you have any questions you wanna front to Ian, or should I just grab one?
let's go ahead and just grab one. Actually, I've got one here that wouldn't be too bad.
Go ahead.
So, I'm going to butcher his name, though. It's... You know what? I can say the end. The end of this person's name is B. Mata. He says, have you ever... Fantasized seems like a weird word, but have you ever fantasized with the possibility of being hired for a new Sonic cartoon or anime? And do you kind of have any idea of how you would like that to be structured?
Well, I mean, I did get to write a couple episodes of Sonic Boom.
That's right.
I have that on my resume. I can always... The next bit comes out. Sorry, am I cutting out? Or
no, you're good. You're good.
Okay. I'm just going by the little circle in Discord saying whether or not I'm talking. I would love a animated series that was a little more action-oriented. Kind of like the beginning of Sonic X, beginning of Season 1, end of Season 2 type of stuff. Cut out everything in the middle. Not Season 3, that was bleh. But, not something grim and serious, because that's not Sonic. That's never been Sonic. And when Sonic tries to be that, it's really hilariously not Sonic. But I would love to see a action cartoon, a little more action-oriented than Boom, but still with that kind of bouncy, lively feel to it. Shoot, I guess the way we're writing the comic. I would love to see the comic anime. How about that?
That works, yeah.
I mean, have you had a chance to read Sonic number 7?
I haven't yet. I want to, though, for sure.
Do you know what happens in it?
I've made a point to avoid spoilers, but if you want to say on air, I am A-okay with that.
No. I will not spoil it for you. I'm just saying, when you see it, imagine that animated. And you'll see exactly what I'm talking about.
Gotcha. So there you go. See, this is great because you're answering all these questions and you're getting people like myself to read the books as well. So it's perfect, So let's see. I've got some more questions here. We've got plenty of questions actually, but let's see. From Well, that kind of answers the other question I was going to have, and that was the direction. This is from Moores. He was asking the direction that you would want to take the Sonic games story-wise. The games instead of the show.
I would want to keep it pretty much in the same tone that we're doing with the books.
Right.
High-paced, fairly light-hearted, but with stakes. Something I've said in the past is that the balancing act that you have to do with Sonic is that it's a ridiculous scenario. These angular, brightly colored talking animal people. But the way that you give it any kind of gravitas where it doesn't feel like it's ridiculous is that you have the characters take their own world seriously. They live in it. That's their experiences. But you do not necessarily take it seriously.
Right.
You recognize that this is a cartoon setting, that this is purely fanciful. But as long as the characters take it seriously, the audience will take it seriously. Even if it is really out there, which Sonic is. It's really crazy stuff. But as long as you treat it with respect and have the characters treat it as something that they are experiencing, that will bleed out into the experience for the readers. Viewers, players, whatever.
Right.
Media consumers.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It kind of this is a little off topic, but that answer, it kind of reminds me of like one of my favorite movies of all time is Ghostbusters, and how that kind of balances like that's a comedy movie, but when it comes to the ghosts, that's like believable because they don't really make jokes about that. It's, a lot of it's Bill Murray being sarcastic, but you can have the believable side because the characters believe it and they take that seriously. So I feel like that goes a lot with what you're saying there, where you can have the sort of fanciful, fun side of everything, but then there's also the parts that you take seriously and make it believable, and that's the world itself.
Right, and even like you said with Ghostbusters, there are people in the movie who question the existence of ghosts, whether or not the Ghostbusters are frauds, but it's done within the context of the movie. It's not, there's no point where they look at the camera and go, ghosts, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Wink.
Exactly.
It's their world, it's their universe, and they treat it as if it were real to them, because that's what it is.
Right, and write some more. So, got another question here, and this is a pretty good one, actually, from these folks' names, though. He asked one earlier, it's Balil. He asks, how do you balance plot progression and world building?
That is the $1 million question, isn't it? It comes down to looking at the overall structure of what I'm doing with the current story arc. You know, you have to break it down into pieces. Like with Sonic, this run, it's, okay, here's year one. Here's our starting point. Here's our end goal. And how are we going from point A to point B? All right, we've got that figured out. How do we break it down into a format that Sega wants and IDW wants and find where that meets in the middle? Cool. How do we break up the story so it fits all that? And now that we know where the narrative is and where the beats are, what can we do in each beat that progresses part 1 to part 2 and so on? And what can we fill in from there? There was this write-up years ago of, was it an economy professor? I'm going to butcher this, but anyway, the premise is the professor stands before his class with a jar and fills it with all these large river stones and says, is the jar full? And the class says, yeah. And then he pours in a whole bunch of smaller rocks that all fit in between big rocks. He says, okay, now is it full? They say, yes. He pours sand into the jar, and that fits into all the little pieces. Now is it full? And nobody wants to answer because they feel really dumb now. And then he pours water into it, and that fills it up to the top. The lesson being, there's always another way to look at it. There's always more room to do more. So that's kind of my philosophy when approaching the storytelling is, okay, I have the narrative beats down. I know where I'm going. These are the key things that must happen in the story. Now, what else can I do on top of that without distracting from that main storyline? What offhand comment can be taken and spun into more of the world? Where's a moment where we have some downtime where I can spend it with the characters explaining things, or what background details, what's the setting, what are the buildings like, what is the terrain like, what are these visual elements that can clue people into what's going on? And because I'm a glutton for punishment, where can I foreshadow things that I want to do 2 and 3 years down the line and sneak those little Easter eggs in so that when people get to it, they're like, oh, he had this planned all along.
That's awesome. So I guess for another question, this one's a little bit off of this particular beat, but it's a little more specific to something you did a little while back. We got a big Knack fan in our community. He wants to know, was it your idea to pair Knack, Bean, and Bark together as the Hooligans? And if so, how did that go about creating their personalities with their pre-established characters, having so little previously made for them or established?
Yep, I put them together and was very delighted to find out years later that in early plans for Sonic Heroes, they actually thought of putting those 3 together as a team. Like Team Hooligan Team Hooligan was almost in Sonic Heroes.
I didn't know that.
Beat me to the punch. And that makes me so freaking happy. I mean, it wouldn't have been Team Hooligan as I crafted it. Who knows what they would have done with the characters, but it was so close. So close. In terms of creating characterization for these guys, I look at the gameplay. And with Knack or Fang or whichever way you want to call him, he always starts off his stages with this very confident laugh. In Sonic the Fighters, he always has this kind of almost wild smile going on, and he does the springy tail thing, and all of his traps backfire on him, or the Marvelous Queen backfires, so he's bouncing around, barely able to control it. So that right there tells me that he's very full of himself. He's got a lot of confidence, but he can't back it up. He's almost a Wile E. Coyote type of character. But because he was portrayed as so much more competent in the comics over the years, people have this idea in their head that, Fang the Sniper, he must be serious. He's the Boba Fett of the series. And it's like... Not necessarily, but if we take into the fact that Boba Fett got knocked into a big pit and died, sure, all right, fine, the analogy works. So I try to kind of give him that middle ground where he is competent, but that's almost despite himself. With Bean, we had nothing to go off of for the long time until some of the obscure Japanese stuff was very recently translated. Surprise, he's a woodpecker, who knew? But... the fact that he is, just looking at his stage, listening to his stage music, it's very frantic and kind of crazy. The fact that he has a move where he juts forward and pecks you in the face while smiling like a madman. He throws cartoon bombs. To me, that's a Looney Tunes character. And so I took him in that very goofy, zany, fourth wall breaking comic relief angle. And then with Bark, if you've got Knack, who tries to play the straight man, but is kind of goofy, and Bean, who is just Looney Tunes, you need a foil against that. So I took Bark, who has in his gameplay these very big direct moves, the picking somebody up and swinging them over their head, just smushing them flat with these very big, animated, over the top, oppressive physical moves, to let him be the straight man of the group, the kind of silent, strong man. And that way all three of them play against each other, and each of them have a clearly defined personality that is rooted in their gameplay and game portrayals.
That's freaking awesome. Sorry, my mic was on mute and I didn't realize it there for a moment. I was like talking, I'm like, huh? So that's a terrible question. Here's one. What's the favorite issue, or I guess I will inject there, or story arcs you've ever written for either from pre-reboot or post-reboot? I think this individual wants an example from each.
Okay. 175 is always going to have a special place in my heart because Eggman wins. That's just fun. Sonic Universe number 2 was where I got to pave over some pretty big incongruities between the comic canon and the Sega canon, and it all came together in a way that really left me happy. Each issue is really nice, but this one really got it all exactly as I want. Story arcs? Dude. I guess the build-up to the Death Egg 2's launch was really satisfying in that nobody seemed to see it coming. I've trotted out a number of things in the past, and people jumped on it really quick and figured it out because they're Sonic fans. They're smart, but nobody saw the Death Egg 2 coming, and that made me happy. Thicker Than Water. There we go.
It was a very interesting idea. That's a lot of people really enjoyed that storyline, so I can see why that's one of your favorites.
But Thicker Than Water, the bunny story where she meets up with Uncle Beauregard, that I think was kind of like one of the best that we did. Ben Bates did a phenomenal job with the art on that, and I believe Matt Hearn colored it. But that one really resonated, folks. Post-reboot? Shadowfall, I think. The one where we introduced Eclipse was that one really came together start to finish pretty much exactly how I wanted. The whole Dark trilogy was fun, especially when we wrapped it up with the third part, but Shadowfall in particular, I really, really liked.
So to bounce off that question and kind of integrate another question from Roger Dat Soldier in the chat, is there a point in the comics that you feel like it didn't work out so well, like your least favorite thing that you've written, story arc or issue wise, where if not because maybe it just didn't work out so well, maybe because of meddling from editors or something like that, where the story just didn't turn out too well? Is there any particular examples where you're like, that could have been better?
Before we get to that, one last one, Worlds Collide.
Ooh,
man, that was fun.
I loved the Worlds Collide.
That was fantastic.
It was dope.
Even if I did write it, that was good stuff. Worlds Unite, less so. I'll own up to that one. That one could have been better. One that I know that a few folks are not fond of was House of Cards, and I see where they're coming from with that one. I'm kind of there with them because that 2-part story was meant to be a year-long arc, and the editor at the time said, instead of a political drama, let's just do 2 parts and we'll go straight to Interjack Reborn. It's like, but, okay, so we're going to do this entire falling out and reconciliation of Sonic and Tails in 2 issues. Sure, I'll find a way to make it work. And I think for what it is, it functions, but it's not my favorite. And this one always surprises people. I'm not fond of Sonic Genesis, which was the kind of 4-part standalone. Yeah, I wasn't jazzed with the premise. I wasn't jazzed with what I did for it. It's just kind of there for me, and I feel bad because I get people at shows all the time going, oh my gosh, this was my favorite storyline. It's like, great, I'm glad you liked it.
So, do you think it's more of a symptom of the stripped down, more raw setting that you find with Sonic Genesis and that classic Sonic universe, so to speak, as opposed to the more fleshed out comic book universe, which has all these different additional characters? And do you find it more of a problem, to go bounce off a question Egg fucking wrote in the chat earlier as well? Do you find it more troublesome work in a universe with lots of Sonic's friends or a universe with just a few?
Both are fine. It's just a matter of what universe you're working with and what kind of story you're trying to tell. Like Sonic Mega Drive, may it rest in peace. That was just the core 4 of classic characters, and that was tons of fun. Tyson Hess knocked that out of the freaking park, man. People loved that, and that was so easy to just jump into because it was basically, okay, this is what I would do if I were constructing a classic game before Mania came out. It really just depends on what kind of story you're trying to tell with what material you're given. I don't know, it's the idea of the Freedom Fighters in the classic Sonic setting was where I was taking the backstory in post-reboot, and I was perfectly happy there. I don't know, man. Genesis, meh.
That's surprising. Yeah,
Nice.
I personally actually really did enjoy the Sonic Genesis books
and I'm
as
glad
well.
you did.
But
I'm very glad you did.
yeah, but that makes sense though. That makes sense. So I've got a question here from. Technically, it's from 2 people. One of them, the person that asked it, is Spectra SO2. But the person that's really pushing it is our good friend and other admin, Pedro. What they want to know is, have you ever watched the Sonic OVA? And if so, what do you think about the overall film, and what characters stood out the most to you?
It's strange, isn't it? the OVA is this weird thing where it's got that 90s anime charm to it. And from my understanding, it was more or less a pilot to see if they could get a series off the ground, and it didn't do well enough. So all we have is the two-parter.
Right.
And part of me wonders, what if? What if it had taken off? Would we still be seeing the Land of Darkness and the Land of the Sky? Would Princess Sarah be a prominent character? Would she have taken Elise's place in 06? What would the franchise look like if the OVA had taken off, you know? Would we all be wearing retro Old Man Owl shirts? I really dig it because it was the first time we got to see Metal Sonic in action, and he was so freaking cool. The soundtrack is fun. The one thing that bugs the crap out of me, and I bring this up every time, is in, I think it's part 2, when Sonic and Metal Sonic are fighting down in the Land of Darkness, and they smash a piece of rock off and it comes crashing down into Eggman land. Knuckles says he did mean to destroy the Land of the Sky, didn't he? Except he reads the line wrong, as if he's having an epiphany. It's like, that's not right. Did no one catch this one line? It's just, I know everybody complains about the nasal line reading in general, but that one line delivery, it's the wrong read. Redo. Give me the time stones. Let me go back and edit it.
Sorry, I don't mean. We keep having these moments where there's dead air, and both of us are like scrambling to look for questions and things. Yeah, I don't want you to think that we're just like ignoring you or anything.
No, it's all good. I just keep worried that the internet's dropped out and I'm talking to the air.
Yeah. Well, I actually have my mic muted again, so that may have been a contributing factor. Whoops. Hey guys, what about this one? No, so let's see. So how Gil Hermabimoda wants to know what your take is on how the whole Earth is Mobius, Mobius is not Earth, Sonic's world is a different planet, Sonic's world is Earth. What is your intake on that debate? And is the world, quote unquote, we see the IDW comics, Earth, Mobius, both? What's the deal there?
The comic is following the game canon, and Sonic's world is one planet, and the human world is another planet. Whether or not that human world is Earth, I'm not sure, but they are different worlds existing in different dimensions.
Okay. Nice. So, in Archie, they had the whole. What was your take on the deal there? Like, was Mobius future Earth really, or?
Well, in pre-reboot, it was established by other writers that it was Earth after it got smashed by alien technology.
Right.
And I tried to solidify that as best I could when we did the big encyclopedia. I would take everything that's been said and put it into a timeline. I'm not wild about that idea, and I can't completely fault the writers at the time because they were kind of playing it by ear. You know, they started off the franchise based off of the cartoons, and then there weren't any games for years, and then all of a sudden you have Sonic in a new design in a modern setting with people, and it's like, wait, what, how, why? So, you know, the fact that they had to bend over backwards to find ways to take what had been established for years and make it fit is not an enviable position. Post-reboot, I decided to just ignore that issue altogether, and I was approaching it as one planet, animals and people lived side by side, kind of like Dragon Ball. You know, it's just how that world is. And then the bombshell dropped that, actually it's two planets. Like, well, we're just not going to bring that up whenever we put things through to Sega for approvals. It's just, yeah, sure, they're over here, there's people now. Why not? But with IDW, now that we have a much closer tie to Sega and we're starting fresh, you might as well follow their rules from the get out.
I get you. So does IDW have a better relationship, would you say, in your opinion, than Archie did in terms of communication and just things moving along faster?
I wouldn't say better. It's different. With the old run, it felt more like Sega was involved with the bigger picture stuff. You know, you pitch the story and they provide their notes, and then when we get down to script, there was only minor notes on that for the most part. With IDW, they've been really, really receptive to the big picture stuff. What we're doing with the main villain, not to spoil things for Neo Hazard, I would never get away with in the other book, but Sega's also much more involved at the script phase, like what characters we can use, and even lines of dialogue, which is new for me.
Nice. All right.
Right on. So I've actually got another question here from Ice Candy. They ask,
that sounds really refreshing.
Yeah.
I want some ice candy.
Yeah, especially right now. It is scorching in this apartment. But what comic artist has been the funnest to work with, and what's it like having an artist illustrate your work?
Okay, I'm not choosing favorites. I am not making anybody mad. Really, everyone I've worked with has been a consummate professional. If I know going in who is going to be drawing the script, I do try to play to their strengths.
Interesting.
For ease of their workload, and because it just makes the book look better in general. But everybody I've worked with has done something to just absolutely razzle dazzle me. I mean, I honestly cannot think of anyone who did something I'm like, them again? No, it's always like, okay, we have this person. Great. We got this person. Primo. I mean, I've got to take my hat off to Ben Bates and Tyson Hess for doing the gigantic freaking wrist breaker 2-page spreads from Worlds Collide and Worlds Unite, respectively. Ben Bates did the Every Robot Master Ever page, where all 90 of them, 100 of them, are in the sky menacing Sonic and the Mega Man crew. And it's breathtaking to look at that 2-page spread. And I knew that I was demanding a lot from the art team, but with this kind of crossover, it was kind of that you do it for the fans moment.
Right.
And the same thing with Worlds Unite, when you had the united army of all the Sega and Capcom characters attacking Planet Sigma. Like, I had the script for that 2-page spread is like 3 pages long with diagrams and specific tier placement of each character and what they're doing and where they are in relation to on the page. And included in that note, or in the email I sent, I was like, Tyson, this is how I think it would work, but for the love of God, if there's a better way to do it, please just do what you know best. And son of a gun, he did it exactly as I scripted, and oh, it looks so good. It looks so good. Say what you will about that entire arc, but I got my moment where the Delphinius shoots the Moonstone cannon through Sigma's eye, and I'm sold. I'm done. I am happy.
Basically perfect. Love it when a plan comes together.
And I gotta give a shout out to Tracy Yardley, who came onto the book the same time I did. We've been doing this for almost 12 years non-stop. It got to the point where I was so spoiled on having him regularly that I didn't have to script as much, because I knew, Tracy will do it. He knows exactly what to do. Our minds are perfectly in sync. He would add in little in-jokes. I'm like, yes, that's perfect. Like, when we were doing the Sonic X book, which I sorely missed because that was a ton of fun. There was an issue where Bo-kun is masquerading as Eggman and is robbing all these candy stores and bakeries for the sweets. And I had him in the script where he's smashed out the window of a bakery and he's stealing all the cakes up a conveyor belt. And then Tracy added in that the name of the story is Go Ahead, Bake My Day. It's like, you are a beautiful person and you create beautiful things. Adam Bryce Thomas, who's done a ton of stuff with me, he did Sonic number 7, which you're gonna love. It looks so good. We're working on a couple of original projects together. The man's work ethic is insane. He improves like every single time he draws something. It's nuts. I hate him. I love him. What limb do I have to sacrifice to have half his talent? What dark god must I appease? Evan Stanley, who did the designs for Whisper the Wolf, who debuted in Sonic number 8, has this really lovely, detailed approach. She's got this really great style where it's cartoony, but it still feels very realistic and grounded. Dadgummit, I'm forgetting so many people. But yeah, no, there's no favorite artist for me. Brian Campbell, who did so much fantastic stuff on Mega Man, and okay, I'm gonna be here all night. No, just everybody I've worked with. I know I'm forgetting like a million of you, and I'm so sorry, and you are all fantastic. You're probably not listening to this anyway, but I love you all, and you are fantastic, and you make me look good, and you're awesome.
Perfect.
Would you ever consider adapting the OVA into your current comic storyline, like kind of like how Archie used to adapt the games into their storylines? Would you ever consider like old material like that, and let's kind of like plug it in?
Cannot touch it.
Can't touch it. Brutal.
Nope. Sega really does not like us dabbling in old spin-off material. So Sonic X is done, Sonic Underground is done, OVA is done. Yeah, so
understandable.
I get it. They want to try and maintain the brand image as like their current on target whatever.
Absolutely. Well, I've got another question here. This is from Bomb. He asks, what do you think are the core components of a good story?
Oh, geez. We're getting all Professor Ian over here.
Yeah.
A good story needs to have at least one compelling character, someone that you are interested in, and they need some kind of conflict that you are interested in seeing being resolved. This doesn't necessarily mean kind of world-ending event. It could just be, are they going to find enough change to get to the bus so they can get home in time? The rain is coming in. That's the conflict. That's the character's motivation is, oh crap, I don't want to get wet and I want to get home before it gets too late. The plot line and any other details that spin out from there are just extrapolations from that point. What is it that, why does he not have the change to get on the bus? Why is he out so late? What gets in the way of finding the change? Does he drop, the last quarter he needs and it's rolling down the sidewalk? Or did he spend what he had inappropriately and budgeted for? If he's completely out of change, does he ask for it on the street? Is he too proud to do that? Who does he meet when he's asking change? Does he meet the love of his life? Does he meet his father who he lost 10 years ago? You start with that basic premise. Who is this and what do they want? And you go from there.
That's a very good way to put it, yeah. I like that a lot, actually. Kind of one of those things where you plant the seed and just let it grow, in a sense.
I mean, the two questions you can always ask yourself are what happens next or what goes wrong? Because either or is going to open up a whole...
Right. So go
I got
on.
one. My boy Sofox wants to know, did you ever read the UK Eggman Fleetway Sonic the comic from like the UK and Britain and all that? And what'd you think of it?
I did. It was years ago. I don't even remember. And might have been a fan who loaned me their collection. I don't remember, but I liked elements of it. It wasn't my cup of tea, haha, England joke. But I could see the appeal. I see why the fans of Sonic the Comic are so big into it. And some of the art in it is just absolutely gorgeous with all that painted page material. It will always have a special place in my heart simply because I got to meet Nigel Kitchen, one of the primary writers for the series.
Oh, wow.
At Summer of Sonic years ago. And I told him straight to his face, I'm so jealous of you because you came up with the Brotherhood of Metallics. That is the coolest thing ever, and I can't use it now because it's, locked behind all the red tape and such. And he goes, use it, mate. And I'm like, I could kiss you. That is so freaking cool. I can't do it because of legal reasons, but the fact that you offer it is amazing. He was really, really cool.
That's so cool.
Nice.
I've got a question here from Blank Sink. They ask, what do you think of the Babylon Rogues, and would you consider Jet a worthy rival to Sonic? I think he's hoping that you're going to say good things because his little profile picture is one of Jet the Hawk. So
I think the Rogues are underutilized. It's kind of sad that they're relegated to just the Riders series of games, and I'm pretty sure those are dead at this point. I would be really happy to see them show up as antagonists in a game in the future. Worthy rival of Sonic? Maybe in a couple years, if he grows up a little bit, but come on. He needs an airboard to keep up with Sonic.
Agreed.
Yeah. Now, the three of them together are a hoot.
They're
a lot of fun. And I really do want to find a place to use them in the IDW book and have some fun with them. I will say that his rivalry with Sonic is at least interesting, because Sonic has this nasty habit of encountering, the villain du jour, and they either die or become his friend, and that gets really boring. So it's nice that Jet and Sonic have this lingering, not animosity, but a degree of rivalry, that doesn't get paved over. They don't become friends. He doesn't see the error of his ways and reform. He's still a thief. He's still a young, obnoxious jerk. But they have an appreciation for each other in terms of their skill and their free wills. And that's a nice dynamic to have between them.
Right, absolutely.
That and his weird wing feather blade things are super cool, and I wish they used them more.
Oh, yeah. Dr. Chillbrain has a reverse of one of the questions that I asked earlier. I asked you, what franchise or property would you want to write for? He asks what franchise or properties, which I'm not sure if you can actually answer this or not, or want to, but would you never want to write for?
I wouldn't say never, because even if it's a franchise that I don't think would adapt well to comics, or if it's a franchise that I'm not particularly fond of,
work, right?
Yeah, it's part of it would be an interesting challenge. How do I approach this project, whether it's a comic or game or whatever, and use the material in a way that I would find entertaining? And if it comes down to it and I can't, then that's okay. I still have bills to pay. So sure, I love this, whatever it is. Give
right.
Me yum. But no, there's nothing really stands out to me immediately that says, no, you can't touch it.
Right.
No, I don't want it.
No big red flags or anything, or nothing that would compromise your morals or ethics or anything, right?
No, not really. Nothing immediately jumps to mind. I mean, if something is, absolute filth, racist, misogynistic, fascist, whatever, no,
right.
I want to do it. But that's kind of universal. No, you don't want to do that.
Right.
I don't think that's a startling revelation on anyone's part.
Right.
I'm just saying it would be easier to do, say, a Shovel Knight comic than Neopets.
Right.
But
absolutely.
they came to me and said, here's money, do Neopets, I would find a way to do Neopets.
Well, another question, and I think this is a pretty good one. It's Balil again. I can't say his name, but he asks, "What do you think of silent storytelling, such as like in Sonic 3 and Knuckles and Super Smash Bros. Brawl story mode?" And to piggyback off that, me personally, kind of piggybacking off that, if you could write one that's kind of like the Nuff Said that Marvel did in the early '90s with like Spider-Man and Thanos and Deadpool. How would you kind of go about doing that? Do you think that that's something you could tackle, or would it kind of sort of be something that you really got to work with an artist heavily with?
Number one, I would love to do that kind at some point. Number two, I try to use the comic medium more so now than I did in the previous runs, and let the artist and the moment tell the story. There's a lot of big action shots throughout Sonic right now that are meant to be, look at the characters in their element doing their thing. You don't need any battle banter. You don't need talking. Let the moment tell itself. In terms of how I would do the story, again, it depends on who's in the story and what are we trying to accomplish with it. Because it can't just be the fact that it's a silent story, because it's a neat gimmick, but what are you doing with it?
Right.
Is there something that the silence is helping to convey? Is it, how do you approach it? In terms of working with an artist, I don't think it would be necessarily any different than how I already work with the various artists, because I make sure that my scripts are exhaustive. Like, I don't just say, panel 2, they fight robots, panel 3, they fight robots, next page.
Right.
Like, if there's a big fight scene, I'm telling you the size of the panel, where we are in the room, what the camera angle is, what character is involved, what types of badniks they are fighting, how they are fighting the badniks, where the friendly fire is going. Just, I try to be as in-depth as possible so that the artist has no room, or where the artist doesn't have to spend any time guessing how to do it.
Right.
They have to churn out pages super freaking fast. And if they're trying to figure out, okay, how am I to compose this? How am I going to arrange this page? That's time out of their day. So
right.
The more work I do on my end, the less work they have to do on their end. And with a silent comic, it would just be, I wouldn't have any dialogue in the script, but it would be an exhaustive page 1, panel 1 of this size and this configuration with this setting, and the characters doing XYZ, panel 2, so on and so forth.
Right. And, this actually kind of has me wondering a little bit, if you were able to do a silent storytelling thing, would your lettering person celebrate? They're going, well, great, I could grab myself a beer and I got I have to do the credits and maybe, I don't know, advertising or something, but man, I would think if I was a lettering person and someone told me, you get to work, but not much, but you still get paid the same. It's like, well, okay. Barack has a question here, and I did see some of the previews. He asks, how did you come up with bringing back Neo Metal Sonic? Like, kind of what was the process for that sort of callback and getting him to return?
Well, spoilers, Neo Metal Sonic's back.
Yeah. I do know that much because what we have on stream, not sure if you saw, we kind of have some of the IDW comics and some of the other works cycling through, and that was one thing when I was looking up the previews. Oh, wow, he's here. That's really cool.
Yeah, okay. With that one, I didn't want the IDW book to just start off with Sonic fights Eggman.
Right.
Because, sure, that would be accessible to a broader audience, but having just come off of Forces, I felt like it would kind of diminish the ending of the game, and it would be so familiar, it wouldn't be that exciting for this brand new book. So I was going down the list, and it's like, well, I don't want to create somebody brand new because I feel super fanficky. here's a brand new Sonic book. Here's a character you've never known. He's Sonic's greatest enemy. That's dumb.
Right.
So I was kind of going through the list of, iconic Sonic villains outside of Eggman and who can really carry a story arc. And it's not the rogues because they're fun antagonists on the side, but they're not like world enders.
Right.
And everybody else is dead. Black Doom is dead. Nephilis is dead. Infinite may be dead, ? I don't know. So the list was very short. And it comes down to, okay, we've got Neo Metal Sonic, who is a version of Metal Sonic. He was reverted, but he wasn't lost. And as cool as he was, he didn't really get a lot of time to shine.
Right.
You kind of see him going in the shadows, and then he turns into a big dumb dragon. I hate it so much, but it's canon, so there we go. So it's like, okay, what if we brought him back and actually did a little bit with him? Have him do some cool stuff. I'm going to go ahead and spoil it for you. He fights Sonic toe-to-toe in number 7, and it looks freaking amazing because Adam's amazing. But, what if we play with him as a villain and actually get to see him do a little bit here and there? And so that's where the idea for the arc was derived from. And it's like, okay, if Neo is the main villain, where is Eggman and all this? Because we have to reference Eggman. We can't just ignore the main villain for the first year. And that's where the Mr. Tinker storyline came from.
Right.
And the rest fell into place.
That's perfect. Perfect.
Awesome.
Yeah, our good friend David the Lurker, and we're not sure if you can actually answer this one or not, but I'm going to go for it because he's curious. He wants to know if there were any other pitches made to IDW and Sega for a jumping off point that went unused, and I suppose if you can't say anything, will these pitches be used possibly down the line without giving away what they are?
I think Neo Metal Sonic was the first pitch I put in, and IDW loved it, and Sega loved it, so I just ran with it.
Perfect.
I'm sure somewhere on my hard drive I have contingency plans set aside. It's hard to say because right now I'm focusing on getting year 2 up and running, so who cares about year 1? It's done, it's in the past. What, you're reading it now? Too slow. So it's kind of hard to go back, oh yeah, that's what I was doing. But yeah, if I had any previous plans, then sure, there's always the option to look at them again and say, all right, that's what I wanted to do. How can we reconfigure it into a story that would work now? And sometimes that doesn't work. It's like, oh yeah, this was a great story idea. There's no way it would really work with the present narrative. Back into the file you go.
Right. Looking through here. PCO, you got any good questions in your back pocket here?
I was actually fixing a minor
technical difficulty, he says, and then vanishes.
Yeah.
That's not ominous.
Yeah, not at all. I believe we're still on air, though, so that's always good. Let me see here. Looking through.
You want to make sure we're still broadcasting first, or?
Yeah, we are. Just made sure that we were. Let's see. Well, no, we kind of see. Some of the problem is that I come across one, and it's like, well, that's just sort of a rewording of a question that we've already asked, so it makes it a little bit difficult. But yeah, I already asked that one. Already asked that one too.
I like long walks on the beach. I'm a Gemini. My favorite color is blue.
Exactly. Yeah, that's how it... You like pina coladas too?
Getting caught in the rain.
Yeah.
Whoa, that was weird. I apparently misclicked something or something like that.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Welcome.
Where were we just now? Did I get cut off in the middle of my question? Or?
I think you did, yeah.
All right, so let's talk about the original TMNT comics, and you mentioned how much you liked doing character development for Mikey, My question was your character development for Mikey or the other work you did with TMNT, was it influenced by the original TMNT comics, such as when Raphael became the Shredder for a little while in the original comics and the character development with that?
No,
or was it just based on the show?
The stuff I've done for Ninja Turtles has been based off the current IDW. The 2 issues I did for Ninja Turtles Universe that focused on Raphael and Alopex, focused on their relationship and specifically Alopex's backstory and how it affected the characters they interacted with in that story. Universe 25 was a lot of Leonardo dealing with family stuff, and I really got to world build a ton with the astral plane on that. And then Michelangelo's story is a culmination of his experiences with his family in the book to date.
Nice.
Okay. Well, let's see. Doc Melonhead asks, what's your favorite incarnation of Sonic? Classic, modern, there's Dreamcast, there's, of course, I suppose you could say Archie, the cartoons. There's tons of different versions of our favorite Blue Hedgehog, but of them all, what would you say is your favorite? And I wouldn't blame you if you say it's the one that I wrote.
I know there's some folks who make a very clear distinction between Dreamcast modern Sonic and modern Sonic.
Yeah.
I think those distinctions are so
minute
that you're splitting hairs at that point. But
agreed.
It's kind of hard to say because classic Sonic arguably didn't have a ton of personality until most recently. And even then, it might be, you could argue it's been watered down a little. I don't know. That's kind of hard to say. I feel like a complete egotist saying my version, but I guess my take on Sonic is kind of like me cherry picking the aspects of the character that I think work the best and that I've enjoyed the most over the various incarnations. So, yeah, I guess you can say that how I treat Sonic is the version that I have come to enjoy the most out of all the incarnations, just because that's what he represents. That's what he has become.
Nice. Do you got one, or should I just pick out one real quick?
Let's have you go ahead and pick out one.
All right. So, out of all the conventions, panels, and like fan events you've gone to, is there any particular favorite one, or favorite moment, or favorite question or scene that's ever occurred in one of those that you would feel is particularly memorable to you?
Oh, I can answer that for him. It's this one. Just kidding.
There's a show that I do every year called Heroes Con, Charlotte, North Carolina. And that was the first show I ever did. And I don't really go there for the show so much as to catch up with people. Like, there's this group of kids who, when they first came by, they were almost eye level with my table. And then this year, they were all taller than me, and they're going. And that is a very special kind of experience. The one Summer of Sonic I did in London was the first Sonic-specific show I've ever done. And that was a trip because, I don't know, just seeing that much concentrated Sonic love is just it defies description.
Right.
Had a lot of fun at Sonic and Sega Fan Jam a few years ago, doing it again this year. Looking forward to that.
Oh, awesome.
San Diego Comic-Con, if you can go, is enormous. And that word is not accurate enough. It is obscenely huge.
Right.
But I will always remember the first time we did it, my wife and I are in the stampede of people leaving the convention center, and everything outside is all restaurants and hotels. and we're walking down the street, and we look over, and there's this outdoor bistro, and like 6 luchadors in business suits all look up to us and go, "Hoi!" and toast us. And it's like, this is great. You're living in a cartoon. I love this.
That's awesome.
While we're talking shows, might as well plug, I'm doing Fan Expo next week, Thursday to Sunday. Check out bumbleking.com. The Bumble calendar has all the dates and times, so you'll be able to swing by the table. Going to have Sonic and Turtle books. Going to have original prints by Sonic alumnus Dalia Baker. Signatures are always free. Come on down. Say hey. Have a good time.
Heck yeah.
Nice. Any other plugs you want to get in here before we got about 10 minutes left? Probably.
Sure. One more.
We might have a little extra if we're lucky.
If you really like me answering questions, you can head over to my podcast, the Bumblecast. We update every other week, and there is a dedicated Q&A session at the end of every episode. You are free to ask whatever you want, as much as you want. We do have priority Q&A for those who support us on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Bumblecast. But everyone who asks a question will be answered eventually.
Awesome. I do have another one here that I definitely want to get in because this comes from the father of Sonic Fan Games HQ. It's Raylan. He asks,
Yes.
You've had a lot of chances for rebooting characters. What do you like to do if you've started from scratch?
And sorry, but in what regard? Like, just if I were to just take Sonic and
Well,
do it
if
from the
you
ground up,
like when
or-
it comes to taking a character and just sort of having to work from sort of nothing, I believe is what he's asking.
Just in general, for any particular character, like if you had to remake Sonic quote unquote from scratch, what would you like to do? How would you go about doing that?
I suppose I'd like to take a long-term look at it. You know, we've come so far in the franchise, and it's gone in so many wild directions, and it's tried so many new and different things each time. There's a little bit of a sense of a lack of cohesion, I guess. So what I would like to do is look at all the things that have worked in the series over the years and streamline it.
So, what about if you're making something completely new?
You will be able to see that eventually. Again, head over to bumbleking.com. We've got some teasers for a couple of original projects I'm working on with Adam Bryce Thomas. One of them is called Academics, which is a educationally geared comic. Once we're up and running, you'll be able to customize the main character to quote-unquote resemble you as much as it's within reason.
Right.
But choose your armor color, choose your skin tone, choose your appearance, and once we're up and running, you'll be able to go on adventures with this character of colorful folk, with this crew of colorful characters. There's my alliteration. With your own custom hero, and it's mainly geared for younger readers, but it should be entertaining for everybody. And then there's a science fantasy series called Drogoon that I'm working on. Adam and I are hoping to get it up and running early next year, fingers crossed. We said that last year, but, life happens. With those original properties, and I don't want to go too much in depth with them because they are, not released yet. But with Drogoon specifically, it's, this is a wholly original project. And it's daunting because with any franchise, you have the characters and the world and the lore established, and you can play around within that sandbox. But when you're creating your own thing, it's a question of, okay, where do I go with this? Where do I start? Where am I going to end it? Is this something that really works as a narrative, or as something cool? Being your own editor is a nightmare, second guessing yourself on everything. You also have to question yourself, it's like, okay, has this been done before? Am I being too derivative? Is this a fun homage, or getting off track? Am I being consistent with my own characters because I'm setting the boundaries myself? And it's challenging. The first story arc has been completely scrapped and rewritten from twice over, 3 times over. So it's a lot of dedication. It's a lot of love for what you do.
Right.
And it's no easy thing.
Damn. So, let's try and just squeeze it as many as we can here before Stealth shows up. After this, by the way, Stealth, one of the co-developers for Sonic Mania, is planning to do a stream.
Nice.
But in the meantime, would you have enjoyed continuing the Mega Drive series as opposed to the 3-part special was going to be Ask Collision C+?
Sure. If we had the opportunity, the classic book would have been delightful.
Alright. So what do you think of the Sonic Forces writing and the characters having significantly different roles than they used to have? For example, Knuckles is sort of like a rebel military leader as opposed to the Master Emerald Guardian.
That was one thing in particular that I had a bit of difficulty swallowing. So when Sega commissioned me to write the small in-between stories, which were featured on the official Twitter and Tumblr pages, and if you can't find them there, I have them hosted on BumbleKing.com.
Perfect.
One of the stories that Sega put forward was that, okay, you're going to do a story where Silver comes back in time, tells Knuckles that there is a peril coming, and they get attacked by Phantom Chaos. Go. I said, all right, well, I'm going to use this opportunity to rationalize why Knuckles would leave the Master Emerald and why someone who's lived in isolation their entire life thinks they can command a global army. And I like to think that I've filled in that gap well enough. I thought the Forces story was interesting enough. It kills me that we have 6 months of war stories that we don't get. You know, Eggman conquered the world in 6 months. What happened? Where were our heroes? What did they do? What acts of heroism? What losses did they face? There's so many stories to be told there.
It is kind of it would definitely help to have some sort of filling in any particular, let's say, potholes in the plot by someone with a proper cement mixer like you would, if you know what I'm saying.
And not only that, but like in the regular stages, like the one where you're playing as the Avatar character and you hear that the Chaotix are grabbing a ship so that you can go up and save Sonic. You hear a little bit of radio chatter. You know that they're doing stuff, but you don't get to see it because you're playing as the Avatar. What were the Chaotix doing? Let's have a story showing them and their adventure. Yeah, you know what happens, but let's see it in action. So many possibilities.
On that note, how would you what do you think would be like the challenges involved in like trying to make the Avatar character really work with the comic storylines? Like how?
I've thought about that a lot, and I think it's best to just avoid it because there's so many variables on what the Avatar can be that if you settle on one, you're alienating the entire audience. I mean, the story arc for the Avatar is the same no matter what, but were they male, female, what species were they, what did they wear, were they, you know, a conservative commando look, were they absolutely nightmare fuel, so they were insane? There's so many ways to read into the customization that everyone has their own character, everyone has their own story, which is great. That's exactly what they set out to do with the game, as far as I can tell. They aced it there. But the minute you say, okay, this is the Avatar, you're telling everyone else you're not legitimate, and that undercuts the entire spirit of the game.
Right.
So I think we got time for one more question, by the way. Neil, go ahead and pick up a question if you want. You can have the last one, man.
I thought you had one, honestly, because I was going to wrap it up after that one.
Oh, whatever.
Because honestly, at this point, We are unfortunately out of time. It's almost 9 o'clock. We've got our good pal Stealth rolling in here in the next couple minutes. So at this point, Ian, really appreciate you joining us here at Sage 2018, answering all these questions. And
thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Yeah, seriously, thanks a ton. It's been amazing having you here. Incredibly interesting. You actually revealed some interesting things that we'll be having huge amounts of discussions about probably for the next year to come. I can only imagine the amount of debates that are going to come about from the revelation of the whole Team Hooligans being Sonic heroes, but not quite making it. That's going to cause a bit of a riot or two up in here. So thanks for that.
Well, the funny thing is the same source that said that was that when they were picking teams and somebody said, well, should we have Shadow playable? Apparently the SAG offices were like, half of them were like, yeah, sure. The other half was like, he died. It's like, did he die? No, I don't think he did. And then the rest is history.
Right on. Well, from all of us here at Sage 2018, once again, we want to thank Ian Flynn for joining us. And for Instant Sonic, for PCO, I'm Carson. And this has been an interview with Ian Flynn. Stick around, folks. On our Interact page, Stealth is going to be streaming some Sage games and Sonic Mania mods. So we will see you all shortly. Have a good night, folks.